flow that's going to be helping anybody who has tight hips. So to begin, we're just going to take the soles of our feet together, and you can adjust them to whatever's comfortable for you. Some people like to have them a little bit closer in, especially if they want to get more into the inner hips. If you just experiment by taking the feet out a little bit further, and it feels a little bit different, it targets the hips just a little bit differently. So whichever way you prefer, there's no wrong way, just select a position that feels good for you. And before we start to think about tilting forward, we're going to want to sit up nice and straight. So we don't want to do a lot of rounding. That's going to be putting a lot of pressure on our upper back. So really anytime that we're doing a yoga pose that requires us to bend forward, about 95% of the time we want to think about keeping our shoulders away from the ears and really sitting up tall, even if we're lowering our face closer to the ground. So with that in mind, let's find your comfortable position with soles of the feet together in butterfly pose. You can bring the elbows down to the inner sides of the shins if that's comfortable to you, and just start to release down. You may find after a few seconds that you can go comfortably a little bit deeper into the pose, but don't rush it until you feel like you're ready. Good. And when you're ready, let's release up out of that. And we're just going to stack one leg on top of the other by drawing one heel a little bit further to the side of your mat, and then taking the other heel. Now this might be too much for you, so if this is too much, you're just going to take one foot to the outside of the knee. But if you've got a little bit more in you, want to go a little bit deeper, you can actually place your shins parallel so that the knee and ankle are stacked and on both sides and in alignment. So this is probably plenty for most of us. We probably want to stay right here and be careful that we don't collapse. We want to just take our fingertips behind us, form some nice little tents, and we can stay right here. So if you're already feeling a great stretch in your hips here, then just stay where you are. But if you want to go a little bit deeper, you can start to bend forward. Again, as long as you're not rounding, you want to keep that nice straight spine. And if you're feeling like you can go a little bit deeper, you can play with a couple different positions. You can either have your hands right out in front of you on the floor, or you can experiment with placing your elbows directly on the shin. Whatever you do, just make sure that you maintain that proper straight spine. And if you do want to play with putting your hands on the ground, you can even see how it feels to spread those fingers wide. I don't know if you can see in the camera, mine are spread pretty wide. And you're going to place them pretty far ahead of you, and then almost feel like you're trying to drag yourself closer to your hands. If you really feel like you're pulling, like you're trying to pull that floor closer to you, then that's going to create a little bit more of a stretch in that hip. So you should feel this primarily in the hip that is on the top leg. So if you're watching me, you're probably mirroring me, but for me it's my right hip. And so that you're going to feel it mostly in the hip that's connected to the leg on top. Just to make sure that you know that you're doing it right. Good. So wherever you are now, let's come on gently out of that one. And we're just going to release and switch the other side. So whatever leg was on bottom, let's now take that to the top. Again, if this is too much for you, you might be really tight in the hips. It might be all you can do to take that foot to the outside of the knee. That may even be too much for you. So popping back to a really basic level, you can have that lower leg extended straight. But let's see if we can't move up to this intermediate level. And slightly more advanced, again, where we can draw a nice straight spine. Or if we want to take it even further from here, we're going to draw those hands out in front, or elbows onto the shin, your preference, whatever feels best to you. And hold and just relax the mind. Slow down that breathing. Good. From here, let's gently work our way up. And we're going to take the legs nice and wide. This is a forward fold that most of us are familiar with from grade school, and we've been doing it ever since. It doesn't mean it gets much easier though. So things to think about, you want to think about not letting your feet cave in too much. It's natural that they want to roll forward a little bit, and that's fine if they do a little, but see if we can't focus on maybe just rotating those kneecaps up towards the ceiling. Maybe even putting a little bit of flex in the foot if it's comfortable for you. But always making sure that we're not hyperextending. If you feel a really strong pull, you want to back off a little bit. It should be just a slightly uncomfortable stretch, but never to the point where you're feeling pressure, like you have to grit your teeth and muscle through it. If you feel like you have to grit your teeth, then you probably need to ease off a bit, because you can get injured if you're getting too competitive with yourself. So again, wherever you want to stay. Maybe some people are just coming a few inches forward. Maybe we're dropping onto elbows. Or maybe for some of us who are feeling a little bit more open, we can begin to drop that head down. Just again, like we mentioned earlier, being careful not to round in the spine. You want to stay nice and straight. A good way to check yourself on that is to see how far apart your ears and your shoulders are. You want them to be at least a few inches apart. Not hunched up like this. Always taking several deep breaths, trying to remain calm. Good. And let's come forward. So we're going to move into a pose that is working with the front of our hip flexors. So we're kind of hitting the hips from all angles today. We've done already a couple stretches for the inner hips, the outer hips, and now we're going to move towards working the hip flexors, which are prone to getting really tight if we are sitting a lot, which most of us do for our jobs. So for this, we're just going to, you can start it with both knees if you want to get the form right. And you're going to take one knee out and front with a bent knee, and then you're going to walk past a 90-degree angle. So a lot of things that we do in yoga have a 90-degree angle, but this one we're actually going to move a little bit past a 90-degree, just to making sure that there's not too much pressure on that back kneecap. If you do feel like that's a little bit uncomfortable, you can either double up a mat or place a blanket underneath or a pillow. And from here, we're just going to sink into that front hip and maybe lift your gaze towards the sky. It should feel really good. Good. From here, let's take both hands to the inside just so that we come out of this safely. There might not be a graceful way to do it. You can wiggle your feet around, you can swing it around. Might not be real graceful, so just go for it. So we'll walk our way back up to kneeling. We're going to take that opposite foot ahead of us, and then we're going to just scooch it forward a little bit. I'm sure scooch is a technical yoga term. And again, once we're really leaning into that hip, we're just taking our gaze upward. So we're actually, although we're doing a little bit of compression, which is good to bring fresh nutrients to the hip of the knee that's bent, the extended knee is the one that we're really, the side that we're really working on, really elongating that front hip flexor. So for me, that's my left side that we're really working on right now. Finding a couple more breaths here. Good, and whenever you're ready to come out of that, we're going to take both hands to the inside of that foot, swing it around however you can, and let's find ourselves in a downward facing dog here. So we're going to take our fingertips wide. You can't have a yoga flow without a downward facing dog. And from here on the inhale, we're going to take one foot up to the sky, and we're going to take that shin and place it on the mat underneath. Now, most of us are pretty tight, so we probably won't be able to get our heel very high up towards the mat. The goal is to eventually have the shin be parallel. I'm not quite there. I don't know if I ever will be, but you want to make sure that it's just a comfortable place for you where you're feeling a good stretch, but you're not feeling overwhelmed. So this might be a perfect place for you to stay right now, or you might take the elbows down to the mat. Or you might even feel like you can extend it out all the way. Good. After a few breaths to come up out of this, if you're all the way extended, you're just going to walk those hands in slowly. You're going to roll over to the side, And then you're gonna swing that top leg, and I'm gonna turn around to face you, but you won't need to move. And then we're gonna start like we did before with the shins parallel and stacked on top of one another. And then we're gonna take it a step further. So now we're gonna start to walk that bottom foot as far over to the other side of the mat as we can. We can use our arms to help lift and pull so that our knees are now stacked and parallel. So this can be pretty intense, so don't do it if you're not there yet. You can always take the position again of just keeping that bottom leg out and the top leg bent. But if you can find that full position, then it's going to be really, really good for helping get deeply into those hips. And just like we've been doing on all our forward folds, we're going to make sure that our spine is in great alignment, that we're not crouching over, and then we're just going to stop wherever we start to feel stuck.
So wouldn't you know it, my camera ran out of battery power right at the very end of the practice. But I just want to remind you here to repeat the past 2 exercises that we did on the other side, and that will round out a beautiful, wonderful practice. Great yoga flow to help release your hips, make you feel great, and help you relax. Thank you and take care.